In the United Kingdom, the role of the judiciary, the role of the law, is to be the guardian of the law, interpreting legislation as enacted by Parliament. And judges don't create laws, they apply them, ensuring that the legal system functions according to the principles of justice, fairness, and precedent. And this fundamental principle seems to have eluded both the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, who is a lawyer, has a background in law, and the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, whose background is in chaos, in their recent attacks on the judicial decisions regarding immigration, and specifically the approval of immigration for a family of people from Gaza. The Lady Chief Justice, Baroness Carr, has rightly rebuked both leaders for their crass disregard of judicial independence. In her words, both the question from Badenoch and the answer from Starmer were unacceptable. This is not merely a question of decorum, it's a constitutional matter of the highest significance. And when politicians criticise legal rulings without understanding the full basis of the decision, they do more than expose their own ignorance. They undermine the rule of law itself. If the ruling in question, allowing a Palestinian family to settle in the UK, was legally sound but politically undesirable, then the fault doesn't lie with the judiciary, but with the legislative framework under which the decision was made. Starmer, as a former director of public prosecution, should know better than to suggest that judges have erred simply by upholding the existing law or by interpreting the existing law. Badenoch, as a former cabinet minister, should have ensured that proper safeguards were in place when her party was in government and made that law. This raises a fundamental question: why blame the courts for enforcing the law as it stands, rather than accept that the legislative failure was the government's, was in Parliament, was in the House of Commons, and that the House of Commons itself should have done better? Why blame the courts? If Parliament had intended to exclude such cases, it should have drafted the law accordingly. And if it now believes that a loophole has been exploited, the proper response is to amend the statute, not to disparage those who are simply doing their job. The UK's uncodified constitution is based on a delicate balance between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, and it's not the job of judges to rubber stamp government policy. It's their duty to scrutinise its application in the light of the existing law. Baroness Carr's intervention underscores the growing concern that judges are becoming scapegoats for political failures. We saw it with Suella Braverman, and now we see it again with Kemi Badenoch and with Starmer. It's shocking. It bears out my hypothesis that the problem isn't one side or the other. The problem is the stench of the entire House of Commons. There's a growth, a cancer, which has gnawed its way into the heart of our Parliament. And Baroness Carr has spoken of a mounting campaign of attacks on judges, which not only risks delegitimising the courts, but also places judicial officers under increasing personal threat. The trend isn't new. The infamous Enemies of the People headline following the 2016 Miller case is a stark reminder of how populist attacks on judicial decisions can undermine faith in the system. I think there is a serious problem with the judicial system as well as the political system, but that's another matter, and I've talked about it in other videos. Today we see echoes of that sentiment where judges and the courts are penalised for doing what the government has enacted, for interpreting laws that the government has put in place. And we see echoes of that sentiment of attacking the judges in the responses of Starmer and Badenoch, as well as in the reaction of Conservative figures like Suella Braverman and Michael Gove, who have gone so far as to suggest that the judges should not be getting involved in parliamentary debates at all. Braverman and Gove should shut their mouth, because they both know that they've overstepped the mark. I'm really shocked at Braverman and Gove even making any comment on this. Criticism of judicial rulings is not in itself improper. However, there's a world of difference between legal criticism and political grandstanding. And if a government or an opposition leader believes that a judgment is flawed, there's a proper mechanism for redress, the appeal process. The government has every right to challenge decisions through the courts, but it doesn't have the right to undermine judicial authority by suggesting that legal rulings should be ignored or overridden through mere political will. And the true danger here is the erosion of judicial authority. If politicians continue to fuel distrust in the judiciary, it opens the door to executive overreach. And while Baroness Carr warns of an all-time high in judicial security concerns, we should take note. Judges do not have the luxury of defending themselves in the media or the Commons. They rely on the integrity of the system to uphold their independence. And if Starmer and Badenoch wish to see different outcomes in immigration cases, they must pursue legislative reform. And if they can't do that, then they need to get out of their job. They shouldn't be indulging in judicial scapegoating. Parliament makes the law, and if Parliament has made a mistake, the burden of correction lies with MPs and ministers, not with the courts. Baroness Carr's remarks should serve as a reminder to all politicians that the rule of law is not a tool of convenience, it's the bedrock of British democracy. And for the sake of legal certainty, political integrity and judicial independence, it's important that those in government and opposition respect the courts, not undermine them. After all, if the law is failing, it's because Parliament has failed, no one else. That said, and here's my proviso, that said, the legal process is becoming more chaotic, and of course the legal process reflects the mood in the country where control and authority is taking precedence over clear debate and legal rational discussion. And that's worrying. But this is a very specific issue about the relationship between Parliament and the courts. And I think it's very worrying. I'd love to know what you think.